DW Africa Link.
Ghana's school feeding program is facing significant challenges. There is simply a shortage of food supplies in schools that need them, and that is affecting students' lives and their education. But things weren't so bad before. So what went wrong, and what needs to be done to address the crisis? That's what's coming up. I am Eddy Micah Jr., and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Ghana initiated free food for its first and second cycle schools back in 2005. It was meant to increase and retain enrollment, boost nutrition, and fight hunger. However, in recent years, this intervention has been rocked with many problems, especially since Ghana implemented a free senior high school education. There are now calls for parents to provide food for their wards that are returning to school. However, that has drawn concern and frustration as parents and stakeholders call on the government to address the root causes of the food shortages and sustain the program. Joining me for this discussion is Dr. Wuripe Alhassan, a lecturer at the Faculty of Development Education at the University of Development Studies in Tamale, northern Ghana. I also have DW's Maxwell Suuk, who is based in Tamale. Hello and welcome to the program. Maxwell, what's going on with the school feeding program?
Thank you for bringing me into this program, and greetings to everyone that's listening to us. Everyone knows that across Africa, schools have resumed, and especially in second cycle in schools, that's the senior secondary schools. In Ghana, particularly, has been a controversial issue lately because heads of these schools have urged parents to prepare their students with food to return. This used not to be the case because government promised that it's going to be feeding them in school. And it's part of Ghana's free senior high school policy. Now, the feeding in Ghana's basic schools and second cycle school is in two dimensions. One is the basic school, which is assisted by donors, and it doesn't really do. It has its own issues. For instance, quality and, issues of strikes by caterers and all that. But this free SHS actually started under the immediate pass regime, that's the NPP regime, which introduces as a free education, no fee, no payment for anything. So since then, it's been controversial in terms of supply, low supply, and all that until where we are today. So the system right now is that many schools have run out of food stock, and especially in northern parts of the country, about 4 to 5 schools have completely run out of stock, and the authorities now are crying out for help, and this is where we are.
How exactly is it ideally supposed to work?
Listening to people who make valid arguments, it's supposed to be the fact that, okay, if it is free, then it should be purposefully free. So there should be budget, there should be, deliberate budget for it. But then others say that because it's now a problem for government, then they should let the parents who deserve, who can pay, take care of their children. They should return the policy to reverse the policy from free to being assisted by the parents.
So actually, what I mean is we want to get how exactly the ideal situation that how the system is supposed to be operating. So basically, how it works is that now the government is saying that it's taking the whole cost of education at the senior high school level, right? So free senior high school education. And as a result of that, free food, it comes along with free food. But now that food is not coming. So Where exactly is the problem? Is it because there's just shortage of food? Is it because someone managing it is not doing their job well? What is the argument being made about the reason?
Well, thank you for that. But the issue is that we had our drought onset of the season, and people harvested what they could. There's no indicators that Ghana is really facing so much hunger this year, so that you can say that the system doesn't have food. But then, even when Ghana, a year like this was not in play, Ghanaians did not witness a year like this. There were repeated threats of shutdown of schools and then running out of shortages and all that. So it's not an issue entirely that there is no food in the country, but it's just because there is a perceived lack of interest in supplying the food on time. So they had a system called the buffer stock system when they started running the free SHS. So this buffer, it's a centralized system which supplies to all the schools that are under this project. Now, before that, it was just a hedge, like I mentioned. It was just a hedge. They can outsource from farmers they live with and all that, people who know. They go to the market in the community they can buy, and they'll be able to feed their students, so that government releases subventions for them. But it's not done like that anymore. And there's buffer stock, which is centralized. We send food all the way, either in Kumasi or in Accra, to schools up north when they resume. So this is where the challenge comes from. And also there is a perceived, there are allegations of corruption in this. And I can't prove that, but there have been issues of protests about how the system is run, and party boys are the people who are hijacking it and deliberately doing what they want. Right. So these are the challenges that's affecting the operations of this.
Dr. Wuripe, let me come to you. It's rather unfortunate what we are talking about, but what do you make of it? The fact that there's supposed to be free feeding for secondary schools in Ghana, started under the previous government, but somehow that free food is not reaching the kids. What do you make of that?
The question you ask is not as easy as it seems, but I'll try to see how we'll deal with it. Free HSS, we all know it's a lofty idea. It has come to stay, and all we can do is to do what make it better. The issue of food has to do with budgetary allocation and nothing else, in my opinion. When you look at when HSS commenced, the budgetary allocation for senior high school became very huge for the government to handle. And bear in mind that at the primary level, donors are supporting the school feeding. That is why we don't get to hear much about it. But the senior high level is supposed to be shouldered to be the sole responsibility of the government. The government would have to provide everything. But when they started, initially, the pre-COVID years, we were able to do it because there was not much pressure on government. Besides, we had a buffer stock that was centralized to be in charge of this. And at the time, the government was having good footing. But when COVID came, we had to do realignments. Now, the budgetary allocations, government will have to find ways to generate money, revenue, to fund it. And farmers were selling to government on credit. So at a point, government wasn't paying. There wasn't enough financial wherewithal for government to be able to defray all the costs. So the farmers were up in arms. They had to stop selling to buffer stock. And once buffer stock doesn't have food, they are not able to also distribute to the secondary schools. So for me, the foundational problem is just about budgetary allocation, financial constraints.
So then how do you address such a situation? It seems if you see the problem as very clear, doesn't the government know about it? I mean, what has been their response to the problem?
Yeah.
And what are they doing to try to deal with it?
Thank you very much. One of the issues we're facing is government wasn't very transparent with regard to this policy. We have challenge of transparency. Because it was a campaign promise, government wanted to look good, so that we say they've fulfilled the campaign promise. So as to the nitty-gritties of the policies, we don't know. Basically, it is handled at the presidency level. It was the office of the president that was handling the program, rather than the GES that should have been the norm. So once it's a campaign promise, there were no opening up to tell people what the actual problem is. But for me, I think to solve this issue, we'd have to find innovative ways of funding the free food. What we can do is, in the budget, for example, as we state now, we have a levy that is called the COVID levy. This current government says they want to scrap it. So if I were the government, I would use that levy so that we represent, instead of the COVID levy, we turn it into a free senior high school levy, so that we have a sustainable funding for it.
Okay. So, Maxwell, as you mentioned earlier, it was not really a problem before, right? Before now, parents were paying for education, including the feeding, and the problems were far less, as far as I can remember, at least. You could hardly hear the shortages and complaints of poor meals being served in schools. So basically, in a sense, the government messed it up somehow.
I would say so, because, where it did not prepare for the contingencies that are emerging at the moment, and also because there is no commitment, as Dr. Wuripe said, it owes a lot of the suppliers, the food suppliers, and up to now they've not been able to pay some of them. So that's how it got things messed. Because if you say, okay, I'm buying from this source, every time you're not paying me on time, or you're even owing me arrears and all that, these are people who need their monies. Farmers bring to their goods to the market because of problems. So if I come today and you buy, you don't give me money, next time I will not supply you. So it's because there is no that commitment in paying them and buying, sourcing from these farmers. That's why the problem comes from. And maybe his proposals that there is the way to sustain it, I think they were really valid points. That maybe if the government can think outside the box and say, okay, this is how we can tax people, or we can turn things around to sustain it, it's fine.
So how widespread is the problem? Is it more centered in some parts of the country, or is it a countrywide problem?
It's a countrywide problem, but some places more have dried up. Others are on the red zones in terms of their stock, and anytime soon they can also be in that situation. I read in the tabloid, in the news, that the government was convening emergency meeting with heads of institutions to discuss the way forward. We don't know what the outcome would be, whether to direct. But then the president today, over the weekend, stated that there was this food the government imported during the drought to support northern farmers who were affected by the drought. So what we are told here, this food were not given to the farmers. I think even 5% of it was not given to the farmers. So those foods are being hoarded by some politicians and all that. I am told that I read that the president directed that such food should be sent to the schools to ameliorate the situation for now, while they think about a solution going forward.
Right, Dr. Wuripe, how can a situation like this affect school-going children?
I am intimating that we eat to live. Once you don't get food to eat, you can't study. Studies cannot go on. So what we need to do is we have to find a way to address this problem. And for me, bringing in the parents would be very helpful too. For instance, when you look at schools that have strong alumni, or the category A schools, so say, they are able to support the schools. But schools that don't have strong alumni or PTA are those struggling. You know, when the program started, the government shut out parents, that he didn't want anybody to contribute anything. But that's wrong. Some people can contribute, and they are willing to contribute towards the education of their wards. So I believe if we are able to have it, as this new government said, they want to convey a national dialogue on it, on free HSS, say that we will deal with it holistically, because the challenges are quite overwhelming.
What's the worst case scenario if that somehow there's a situation where there's absolutely no food to go around? Because now it seems it's not enough. That's what we're talking about. But it could get to a case where there's no food to even go around. And it's not because there's necessarily no food available. It's a management issue and alleged corruption situations. But what's the worst case scenario here?
The worst case scenario is that the school would have to shut down, as it happens previously. When they are not able to get supplies, the kids cannot come to school and they can't learn. So that means they would have to shut schools down in order that they will be able to put in place measures before the kids come back to school. If you are a headmaster and you are not able to feed your school, you can imagine the kind of pressure that you will face. That will be on you. That you open school, your kids are there, you are not able to feed them. But this is not the problem of the headmasters or headmistresses. It's just that the food is not coming from the top. One of the problems, I think, is this centralization of the buffer food stock. Once they've centralized it, everything would have to come from the top. So going forward, what we need to do is we can decentralize this system as we used to be. If it's not broken, you don't fix it. The decentralized system was working very well until this government came and took over everything and centralized it. So if we could go back to how it used to be, I think it will be very helpful.
And just to refresh our minds, trying to compare the current situation to previous situations, give us a brief idea of how it used to be versus how it is now.
Initially, parents were contributing towards the education of their wards. So students were given some levies to pay. Besides this, we had what we call the PTA. They go have PTA meetings. Then on their own volition, they levy themselves to contribute towards what? Development of their schools, of their wards. And it was very helpful. We were getting internal generated. Now there's no internal generated. Everything would have to come from government. They depend on government subventions. They will have to wait for government allocations. Yet it is not forthcoming. The situations is becoming dire because government wasn't having the money. The issue is just that government didn't have the money to give to them. Initially, when it was decentralized, as a headmaster, you would have to find a way to get supplies till you were given. Now it has been centralized. Supplies have not been paid. They will not supply again to buffer food stock. And sometimes when the government might take even 6 months before it pays suppliers. And they are in for money. They are in for profit. Once they supply, they want their money. And it wasn't coming. And another issue is that we can maybe a remote cause will also be that because if I supply something, a food to students or to buffer stock at a price of 100 cedis, in 3 days' time, it will devalue. That means I'll be losing out, and they are businessmen. They'll be losing. Some of them coming. But we have enough food in the system. But just that buffer stock could not get those people to supply to them because they weren't paying. If I supply, if not paid me, I won't supply again.
Right.
Yes,
the conference of heads of assisted schools have been advocating a review of the free senior high school program in Ghana. What could that achieve?
It will achieve a lot. Now, we'll open the books up. We'll tell everybody will be at the same page. There will be transparency. People will know where are we? Where did we start? And in any case, I am of the view that this system has been long overdue. As a policy, we should review it. When you start a policy, at a point you need to stop, see where you are going, whether you are on the right direction or you are veering off. So this conference, I think, will be very helpful. It will be able to let's bring out the challenge. It will bring out the challenges for everybody to see. And in the case, because it's going to be a national dialogue, we'll get perspective. Everybody will be on board. We'll get experts' views. Then we'll get parents' views. All stakeholders will be on board. Then we'll all know where we are, then where we want to go to. And as stated earlier, this is a policy, a lofty policy that we all need to support. It has come to stay. So the only way we can do is to do what? Make it better.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Maxwell, you've been speaking to people on the ground. You are in the northern part of Ghana, Tamale. What are they telling you about their experiences and how this is affecting them? And what do they expect from the government?
It's not an issue of the northern part alone. All parents have the concern of the lapses, the failures, and then they are all calling on government to fix the system, to own up to its promise, and then so let children learn with full bellies. The case is what they are looking at is if it depends on who you ask concerning review of these SHS. Others will tell you it's a good call because it's not everybody that doesn't have enough to take care of. They have more than others. So they should review it, and then those who really are true poor people can be those benefiting from the system. Others are also saying that it's not the best way. They should just maintain it and then let the country shoulder the cost. But mind you that millions and millions of students are on this, either for food or for studies or for school fees and all that. So depending on who you ask about this, then each person have an answer of how they see it. But largely, it's between these cases. Some say government need to sustain it. Others say no, it is not right. We need to really talk about who are the people who deserve to be benefiting from the free SHS, but not when someone like a minister or an MP who is being paid by taxpayers, by taxpayers and all those people, then their children will also be benefiting equally as somebody who is a charcoal seller and doesn't have, or the petty trader in the market, or even the farmer, then their children will all be taken care by the government. So,
Dr. Wuripe, your final words on this. Maxwell is right. There's a new government. John Dramani Mahama is back as president. What should he do as soon as possible to, reverse the situation and get things back on track?
Okay, thank you very much. The new government has put in place, when you look at the manifesto of the new government, they've stated that they want to improve the system, first and foremost, and they've outlined a number of issues they want to do. First of all, they've stated that they want to convey a high-level meeting on this in order that they will be able to deliberate on free senior high, make it transparent, say that all stakeholders will have an input into the policy. They've also stated that as part of their mandate that they would decentralize in terms of food. They would decentralize the system. When you look at their manifesto on education, they've stated that they would decentralize the system, and they would. And one of the lot of things I've seen in the manifesto is that they've stated clearly that they were going to find a sustainable funding for free HHS, and that they're going to ring-fence some of the oil revenues so that it will be directed towards the funding of free HHS. So for me, the signs look good, but as we'll have to wait and see how it will span out. Okay.
That is what we hope will be the case. Thank you very much, Dr. Wuripe Alhassan, lecturer at the Faculty of Development Education, University of Development Studies, Tamale.
Thank you for having me.
Also, DW's Maxwell Suuk, based in Tamale. Thank you very much for your time.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
Ghana's new president, John Dramani Mahama, has directed the immediate distribution of stored food to alleviate the shortages. There is hope that the government's scheduled meeting with the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools, that is CHAS, will lead to finding sustainable solutions. So what do you think? Join the discussion on our Facebook page, DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. Don't forget to click follow so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. And I am Eddy Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.
DW News.
This is Mimi Mefoneo with the DW News. Central African Republic President Faustin Archange Touadera is expected to meet his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, to discuss security, political, trade, economic and humanitarian cooperation. Touadera, who arrived in Moscow yesterday, is expected to end his visit on January 17. The Central African Republic now has cooperation deals with Russia in several areas, particularly security. South African police have reported that at least 78 bodies and more than 200 survivors have been pulled out since Monday after a court ordered the government to facilitate rescue operations at the Stilfontein mine, the site of one of the most extraordinary tragedies to hit mining. Police said that they would check that no one was left today, Thursday, when a rescue cage would be sent down the mine. The standoff began in November when the government ordered police to arrest any artisanal miner who surfaced, saying it was determined to end illegal mining. A Congolese court has sentenced 3 Chinese citizens to 7 years in prison for possessing gold bars and $400,000 in cash linked to illegal activities in the artisanal mining sector. This marks the first trial of